welcome to the new world of global street photography. From Bangkok to Beirut, Sydney to San Francisco, Mumbai to Milan, the number of photographers enjoying the jolting energy of a city and recording public life in all its unvarnished glory has risen dramatically. Who are we talking about? These are the photography world's hunter-gatherers, the slicers and dicers of the flow of reality, recidivist shoot and scram merchants, sharp-elbowed chancers. Peering closer, we find the true obsessives trying to master the trajectory between looking, noticing, and seeing. In the process, they loiter with intent, enlisting various sleight-of-hand techniques to get to the shot that matters. Despite being a largely solitary and occasionally lonely activity, street photographers are acutely aware of the social landscape. They excel at reading body language, ponder the implausibilities and inconsistencies that urban dwellers largely ignore, and thrive on recording the mysterious habits and foibles that every last one of us demonstrates on a daily basis. A flaneur with a camera, the street photographer is primed to channel the uncanny and capture those too good to be true moments when the warp and weft of reality gets tugged in their favor, in the words of Henri Cartier-Bresson, a fugitive moment. At the apex of the art form, the most attuned practitioners seem to have chanced upon a parallel universe in which incongruous and ineffable events take place, while the rest of us remain absorbed by our streams, feeds, and phone conversations. The best street photographs open us up to a wide spectrum of emotions, sometimes a delicious blast of humor, but also compassion, befuddlement, and, every once in a while, awe at the world we inhabit. If anything, our hypermediated and stressed-out modern societies are crying out for photographers to record the huge urban shifts that have been taking place in recent years. Moreover, as we seemingly accelerate into a future that is stage-rehearsed, art-directed, and seeking perfection, isn't it imperative that we have a visual record that is unvarnished? One of the attractions that street photography offers the wily practitioner is that there are a million different ways to make a picture, even if only a tiny fraction of the resulting images will ever resolve into a frame that is worth keeping, never mind showing. Like jazz, which is occasionally described as old-fashioned and hidebound by history, yet retains its ability to morph into new musical forms, street photography continues to thrive as a practice, because it allows a photographer to respond eloquently and elegantly to the conditions that exist in the here and now. The best street photographs reek of lives being lived and the pleasures of getting lost in a strange town or city. The daily luxury of looking at, through, and into other lives adds an eyewitness account of our posed and finessed world. Street photography's previous fiefdoms, such as Paris, London, New York, and Tokyo, remain mainstays of the genre. But technical advances in digital photography and the enthusiasm for an art form that is as easily accessible as walking out your front door with a camera around your neck have led to street photography expanding its influence to other corners of the globe. And we think that is a good thing. As thou must not instructions tend to impinge on creative expression, we do allow for an expanded and more generous account of the term street photography, a broad church, rather than a narrow set of scriptures. We interrogate why street photography has become such a huge global phenomenon, locate its most exciting scenes, and speak to the next generation of practitioners who are creating new styles and narratives in their work. Matt Stewart selected the featured photographers, contributing portfolios to this title. He then interviewed them over Zoom and handed over the conversation to Stephen to edit into the artist texts which accompany each folio. Reclaim the Street is a timely look at where this creative energy has been coming from and what subjects have been broached by this new cohort. For those of you who are still a little unsure of what street photography is, here is a quick crib sheet. First off, it is not about shooting important or notable events in public, the kind of scenes you might find in a newspaper. Street photography is more interested in the everyday flow of life, the easily overlooked, even the mundane. By focusing on everyday life, It aims to rise above the unremarkable nature of the subject matter in a way that is artful and suggestive of aesthetic consideration. The artfulness is generated by the photographer immersing themselves in the world that flows around them and being alert to the discovery of random elements, which, when brought together in a camera viewfinder, make for an intriguing, beautiful, funny, or puzzling photograph. This reliance on chance discoveries rather than pre-planning is what makes street photography fun and addictive for many people. For those who have practiced street photography for many years, there is something almost meditative in maintaining the constant state of awareness in the actual taking of photographs. While passers-by devote themselves to to-do lists, the street photographer absorbs and reflects on the tensions and relationships that exist between people and urban architecture. Given that the camera shutter has to be released within fractions of a second, and the photographer has to be just so in the right place, minute differences will determine whether a photograph will succeed or fail. This high-wire act between a fast-moving world and a photographer with a mechanical accessory can lead to a boost in mindfulness that many of our contributing photographers mention when explaining why they do what they do. People forget how expansive street photography can be. Reclaim the Street recognizes that street photography is more redolent of a sense of inquiry and an experimental mindset than a rule-based process. As an art form, it is wildly malleable and can run the gamut of artistic practice. Following on from the likes of Ed Ruscha, it can be conceptual and minimalist, inspired by Diane Arbus. It can embrace portraiture, as exemplified by Stephen Shore's masterworks. It can be landscape-focused or diaristic. It can also be sensationalist, maximalist, deadpan, and hysterical. The most inventive street photographers aren't just walking around looking for stuff. They are often provoking themselves to come up with new ways of seeing. Some photographers insist that deliberately getting lost in a city, even a very familiar one, is the best way to see subjects afresh. Seeing the world through a child's eye is another psychological trick that is a useful way to channel a sense of renewed awe about our usual living environments. The legacy of surrealism remains a key motivator in much modern street photography. Henri Cartier-Bresson, who knew the original surrealists, often worked with their tropes, catching the eye of a malevolent-looking mannequin in a shop window, reading faded graffiti, and using other found objects in his early work. Likewise, many street photographers working today routinely attempt to divine hidden truths about the urban environment by capturing a mix of sinister-looking objects and out-of-context graphics in their images. Whether reveling in the small joys of getting lost in a city or being drawn to locations with historical backstories, street photographers are often doing more than arbitrarily pointing a lens around. They are also flexing mental tools around mapping and narrative that enrich consciousness itself. Now that we've explained that we are leaning towards quality imagery rather than a one-size-fits-all approach, the next question is, what subject matter are we going to be featuring? Well, it's going to be a varied diet, with plenty of visual food groups, a plethora of strong street-based supplements, and not too much that will lead to a sugar rush. This is an antidote to many of the street photography anthologies out there that are loaded with what could be described as straight-up bangers. Our mission is to uncover the people who are producing a more nutritious, slowed-down version of street photography. While jokes and puns are welcome, we would like to bring you some visual poetry, but also images that have the staying power of pop songs and novellas. It's a recognition that the world is a complex and ambiguous place, encompassing pain and joy, mystery and certainty. Street photography has become much more inclusive demographically and has also made deep inroads into countries where it has traditionally not been practiced. In the last 10 years, there have been many more women excelling at street photography, and they have been challenging the compositional and thematic strictures of much modern street photography, bringing different sensibilities to what has historically been too much of a boys' club. Where previously, Flickr had been the online platform that budding street photographers used to show their new frames, in the 2020s, Instagram appears to have swallowed the photography world whole, and every user is a personal brand, waiting validation. The desktop jockeys of Flickr have either migrated to phone-centric Insta or left the online photography conversation altogether. The online currency that is a red heart gives every user a quick jolt of dopamine to get them through the day. Given the granular nature of the algorithm that underpins Instagram, everyone gets a precise account of what their posted photograph actually counts for. They can see the graph of appreciation rise close to posting time, then gradually tail away a few hours later. It seems photographs have become ultra-ephemeral in the process, lingering in the consciousness of users just long enough for a glance and a tap of the icons. As the photo memes amplify and resonate, many photographers on Insta are being reduced to becoming entertainers, offering to their followers a daily supply of tiny rectangles of sensation that allow everyone to smile and then move on with their day. As street photography gets pumped out on Insta by thousands of obscurely named members, there is a sense that photography is being reduced to a viral phenomenon, with the possibility that herd immunity for those who graze on their feed may be the outcome. All that said, street photography as a subset of an Instagram universe has brought new talent to the fore and seemingly created whole new subgenres. The whole idea of collective endeavor is perhaps where street photography has matured most in recent times. What has until recently been a relatively solitary endeavor has developed into a form of group activity and identity, sometimes organized online, as many of the collectives are structured or enjoyed at street level, where a new breed of festivals spawns group workshops followed by image critique sessions. The social glue that brings these events and organizations together gives modern street photography practice a degree of resilience, networked communication, and feedback that should hold it in good stead in years to come. Our black mirrored screens may account for much of the action when it comes to showcasing what constitutes the modern street photography scene. But we remain convinced that the printed medium is still the optimal format for appraising and appreciating the imagery that these talented photographers have acquired. Ink on paper gives us time to visually consider what screens don't. Pages turned and smoothed allow us to move backwards and forwards at our leisure, while digital devices demand constant flow. Above all, we have in this crafted volume a global, yet local, record of everyday lives lived, sights seen, and photographs modeled out of quotidian experience.